It's great to be here today, and I want to first start off by acknowledging that we are gathered on the territories of the Lekwungen-speaking peoples, the Esquimalt, and the Songhees nations. Joining me today to celebrate the work that we are doing in partnership to ensure healthy water is here for generations is BC's Premier John Horgan, and I'm also incredibly pleased to introduce an advocate for healthy watersheds and for the people that she represents, Cowichan Tribes Chief Lydia Hwitsum. Joining us also today is Zita Bothelo, who has woven together environmental issues and public policy throughout her career. And she's the director of Watersheds BC and the co-director of the Healthy Watersheds Initiative. So it's my pleasure to first invite Premier John Horgan to speak.
Thanks, Josie. And it's great to be here. I also want to acknowledge the traditional territory of the Lekwungen-speaking people, the Esquimalt and Songhees First Nation, and I want to thank both Zita and Lydia for being here today to help us get this announcement underway. It's a critical moment, I think, to have a strong watershed advocate like Zita and the chief of the Cowichan Tribes, who also has a long tradition of working to protect and preserve the watersheds in Cowichan territories, massive salmon rivers like the Coxsala and the Cowichan, and to have Lydia here today leading the Cowichan Tribes on their water sustainability activities is outstanding. And together, we're going to be protecting the Coxsala watershed, and it's the first of its kind water sustainability plan. And although it is the first agreement of its kind, it will not be the last, because we all know that climate change is here, it's with us, it's real, and we need, as British Columbians and as Canadians, we need to ensure that we're doing everything we can to protect what we have and preserve and prepare and adapt to the challenges of climate change, not just here in British Columbia and in Canada, but indeed internationally. Our Clean BC roadmap will be accelerating in the months ahead as we get towards our first targets of 2030. And then, of course, 2040, and then net zero by 2050. But as we do that, we want to make sure that we're not just focusing on emissions, we're not just focusing on profiles of transportation, housing, and so on. Our natural environment needs care and attention as well. And nothing is more important to the fabric of British Columbia than our river systems and our watersheds, which are the lifeblood, the veins of our spectacular temperate rainforest, and also our arid communities in the interior, as well as all of the other different landscapes that we are benefiting from here in British Columbia. And so why we're here today is to re-announce a $30 million budget commitment in Budget 2022. It complements the work that we started last year through the Stronger BC program, the Healthy Watersheds Initiative, where we saw over 800 people getting jobs working on our coast, working on our watersheds to protect and preserve those things that are so important to us. From monitoring the Elk River watershed in southeastern British Columbia to the work that Lydia and the Cowichan Tribes have been doing on the Cowichan River, as well as the Coxsala. In this year's budget, over 50 projects have already been approved across the province, and this funding will kickstart a wave of new initiatives designed to ensure that we're protecting our ecosystems, our rivers, our lakes, our watersheds, and our coastal areas. All of these will involve, in one way or another, Indigenous communities, but fully 50% of the programs that will be announced will be Indigenous-led, and of course the other 50% will be depending on collaboration and cooperation and a working relationship with rights and title holders right across British Columbia. This is a particularly exciting program for me as a born and raised Vancouver Islander, and knowing the Cowichan Valley as I do, to be able to work with Chief Hwitsum and the Cowichan people and the community of South Cowichan to protect the importance of the Coxsala watershed is particularly moving for me as a lifetime residents of the area. It is very, very exciting. But these initiatives are also being duplicated. Minister Heyman and Parliamentary Secretary Finn Donnelly are making a concurrent announcement in the Lower Mainland, out the Fraser Valley. This is not a Vancouver Island program, but today we're celebrating the work on Vancouver Island. It's a delight to be here, and I'll pass the microphone back to Josie to introduce Zita and Lydia.
Thank you so much, Premier. Our next speaker this morning is Chief Lydia Hwitsum.
Ait squel, siam good day, respected ones. Thankful for all of us gathering for this announcement here today. Premier, Minister, thankful for the commitment, the ongoing commitment to watersheds and a Healthy Watersheds Initiative. Lydia is my traditional name. Lydia Hwitsum, I'm the Chief of the Cowichan Tribes. I just want to really take the time to acknowledge the valuable investments that have been made through the initial $27 million in the Healthy Watersheds Initiative, the ongoing investment, seeing so much value in terms of the movement towards collective efforts to work together, finding those ways that with the investments that are being made to work, bring Indigenous knowledge in to play, make better decisions in the best interests of our whole of watershed, all of our watersheds. So just wanting to acknowledge this valuable step today. Cowichan has long been a watershed champion and a watershed leader in recognizing the need for us to all work together to find those ways to collaborate between jurisdictions, recognizing the existence of Indigenous rights and title, and also moving forward in a way that the other jurisdictions who have authorities to make decisions, that we work together and make the best decisions we can in a whole of watershed thinking. So I'm very thankful to as well bring our Indigenous principles into play in the work that we're doing in Cowichan. Nutsamat, Kusyais, the Ka is a principle we've brought forward saying we will work together using the authorities we have to partner and make the right decisions for our watersheds and our water systems. Some of the work I just referenced, it's been over a decade now that Cowichan has worked to establish the Cowichan Watershed Board, bringing jurisdictions together to make decisions with respect to the well-being and planning for the well-being of our territories and our watersheds. This additional commitment it's such a positive step towards the value we see in Mother Nature, the value we see in working together to move forward. The recognition of Indigenous peoples and the co-development moving forward are critical pieces. The funding has supported technical work, restoration projects within our territory and other areas. So the investment has been an investment in water and watersheds and how we work together to make the best decisions we can. There's long-term governance and planning that needs to be done. These investments, I think, we see the value that's been added in terms of the amount of jobs, employment opportunities, and training that happens, but ultimately looking at the well-being of our water systems and watershed. The Healthy Watershed initiatives it's really served to empower. We've got young people out working. It's further empower Cowichan Tribes in our partnerships moving forward with the Cowichan Valley Regional District as well. I think the wonderful innovation, collaboration that will come from these continued investments, working with Indigenous peoples, is such a wonderful recognition of the value that we all collectively have when it comes to water, and our collective dependence on the well-being of our watersheds for the well-being of us as human beings and the rest of the beings that we share a watershed with. I lift my hands up, thanking you all for being here, recognizing the province for their continued investments, and just very thankful for us to forge together to find those opportunities to work together. So with that, I'll pause and hand the podium back. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chief Hwitsum. It's so wonderful to hear the passion in your voice. And I would now like to introduce another passionate woman about watersheds, Zita Bothelo, the Director of Watersheds BC.
Thank you, Premier, Minister Osborne, and Chief Hwitsum for the opportunity to join you today. Some of my best memories are connected to experiences around fresh water. Learning to paddle a canoe with my father, watching my children see the salmon run at the Gold Stream River. I'm sure you have similar memories. They connect us all to the powerful essence of water in our hearts and minds. Water is the most basic need for humans and ecosystem health, safety, and progress. It inspires celebrations, music, art, poetry, and stories. For Indigenous communities, it's sacred. People feel the impact of climate change most strongly through water. Last year, British Columbians experienced severe floods, droughts, and forest fires. These disasters impacted people, their livelihoods, and important habitats that wildlife depend on. It was clear how our physical and social resilience are linked. We know that these climate threats will continue to grow, and proactive investments in our watersheds, like what we're celebrating here today, are the best line of defense against the climate crisis and can save billions of dollars from future climate disasters. As you've heard already today, our watersheds are the foundation of our health, security, and prosperity in BC. With healthy and secure watersheds, we have clean drinking water, healthy fish populations, water to grow our food, thriving local economies with good jobs that allow people to stay in their local communities. This new funding builds on the Stronger BC investment in the Healthy Watersheds Initiative, which was led by the Real Estate Foundation of BC. It supported 61 projects, and as the Premier mentioned, employed over 800 people. It demonstrated that investing in watersheds is a triple win. It creates jobs and contributes to local economies, supports climate adaptation measures that protect and restore critical habitats, and if it's done with respect and reciprocity, it strengthens relationships with First Nations. The results have been remarkable and inspiring. Results like the intergenerational learning that's happened on the land with the Stakai Learning Society and the Gitxsan Watershed Authorities. Good employment and training in communities such as Heshquiet, Alhauzit, and Tlaquiet First Nations. And climate resiliency in the Fraser Valley's Peach Creek Huge wetland. As stewards of this new investment, Watersheds BC and Make Way Foundation are excited to build on the foundation of HWI, including implementing the learnings and principles shared by Indigenous partners and leaders. The funding will continue to advance Indigenous-led visions of watershed security and health, while making meaningful progress towards upholding the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. Many partners and colleagues have spent decades working on fresh water, and this funding for watershed projects over the last 2 years has been a game changer. It demonstrates a critical turning point. These investments have changed people's lives. It's enabled communities to collaborate, create, and deliver solutions in their own watersheds. The BC government's committed to a watershed security fund, which can continue to build on the successes that we've seen to date and allow this important work to continue in perpetuity. It's an opportunity to lead the country, to develop a made-in-BC solution that creates a legacy of healthy watersheds in the present and for future generations, so we all can be proud of the places that we call home. I extend my deep gratitude to the water stewards, REF BC, and partners across the province for their leadership in this work. Thank you, Premier Horgan, Minister Osborne, and your colleagues for your support.
Thank you so much, Zita, for those wonderful words. Chief Hwitsum and I needed to trade in our rubber boots this morning for our high heels before arriving today because we had the opportunity to be together on the territories of the Cowichan Tribes and take a first-hand look at one of the projects. And I want to thank Chief Hwitsum for welcoming me to the warm land and for sharing some of the work that she and her people are doing. I really love being in that part of Vancouver Island. It is incredible to see the gifts and the ecosystem services that nature provides to us and all of the people who live and work in that region. And being in a beautiful place like that, I think really reminds us the importance of restoring and caring for the environment. And it's work that we do with the full understanding that it's being done on behalf of our children and our grandchildren and for generations yet to come. When Premier Horgan announced the creation of the Ministry of Land, Water and Resource Stewardship, it marked a real turning point in how natural resources will be stewarded and managed in the years ahead. It's not just a new ministry, it's a new approach to resource stewardship in the province. And it builds on the progress that we've already made working together on land, water, and resource management because we want the natural resources sector to support 3 goals that are important to us all: reconciliation with Indigenous peoples, environmental sustainability, and economic opportunities. And a cornerstone of my ministry's mandate is to ensure that water and watersheds are respected and valued, in part through the development of the Watershed Security Strategy and Fund, with support from the Minister of Climate Change and, the Minister of Environment and Climate Change Strategy. And watershed security encompasses several things. It encompasses the availability of high-quality water for healthy ecosystems and communities, safe drinking water for us all, and resilient watershed ecosystems, which are critically important for climate adaptation. We're creating a new vision for land and resource management in partnership with First Nations. And as Minister of Land, Water, and Resource Stewardship and Minister responsible for fisheries, I'm both proud and incredibly grateful that reconciliation is a core part of my mandate. Clean water and healthy watersheds are crucial to the well-being of our ecosystems and communities, and I really want to recognize the work that Cowichan Tribes and Chief Hwitsum are doing in restoring these important rivers, the Cowichan and the Coxsila. When different levels of government come together and work together to achieve mutual goals, it strengthens those relationships and it builds mutual trust. Ongoing collaboration is absolutely critical to the work that we do to making better and more responsive decisions about land and water stewardship. I am fully committed to the work that I am doing and the tasks that our ministry, our new ministry, is undertaking. And it's work that we have to do, that we must do for the sake of the land and the water, but we also do it for the benefit of all British Columbians to ensure a healthy and resilient future. I'm so pleased that we could all be here together today to talk about the work that we're doing side by side and the goals that we're achieving together. Thank you so much, and I'll invite Premier Horgan to come back up to the podium and we can take some questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Josie.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. As a reminder to media on the phone line, please press *1 to enter the queue. You're limited to one question and one follow-up. We will start with questions in the room today. If you can remove your masks and speak loudly, please, so the microphones can pick up your voices. We will start with Binder Sajan, CTV.
Premier, just wanted to ask you about something that happened in Victoria yesterday with the arson fire with the pastor of the Ukrainian church. Are you worried that that could be possibly a hate crime?
Well, certainly the first thing I want to do is acknowledge and offer my sympathies to the families of Father Wisniewski. He and his daughters were fleeing a fire in their home, which is tragic enough. But when it's potentially an arson, potentially a hate crime, this is certainly something that British Columbians don't expect to wake up to. And certainly Father Wisniewski and his family have been through a tremendous ordeal over the past 24 hours. What we can do as a community is continue to stand with the Ukrainian community, not just here in BC, but indeed internationally, and speak out with one voice against the violence in Ukraine being perpetuated by Vladimir Putin and the Russian military, and talk instead about how we can come together, how the teachings of Father Wisniewski would be about turning the other cheek. It would be about forgiveness and reaching out to those who may well feel hate in their hearts, and try and soften that and bring them around to a more holistic way of thinking. But I just can't imagine how I would have responded if my family was burned out of their home, and we don't know yet, as the investigation unfolds, whether it was a hate crime, whether it was directed at people's faith, people's ethnicity. We don't know. But what we do know is that all British Columbians stand with the Wisniewski family today in unison, saying with one voice, we're with you and we're here to help.
Bender, do you have a follow-up?
Premier, just wanted to ask you, good to see you back after your recent bout with COVID. Wondering just sort of, what your experience was like in terms of how contagious it was. Dr. Theresa Tam has said that Canada is in a 6th wave. Do you believe that British Columbia is in a 6th wave? And if so, do you expect that public health or perhaps individuals should maybe be paying attention and changing how they do things a bit?
Well, I don't think people need to change their behavior because they should be following the guidelines that public health have put in place. They are no longer orders, they're guidance to citizens. Dr. Henry's been pretty clear that if you're in a public place, as we are here indoors, best to wear a mask, wash your hands, be conscious of your surroundings. I contracted the virus now coming on 2 weeks ago, and I'm low on energy. That could well be a result of radiation treatments as well. So I've got a bunch of things going on in my life. My spouse became ill, but tested negative 3 times, but it was pretty clear to both of us that she was sicker than I was, so, and we were in the same house. I think, again, follow guidance, avoid other people if you've got symptoms, certainly stay away from your workplace, and I'm confident that we can get through this. But I think British Columbians have enough information based on the past 2 years about how they should behave. Obviously, immunizations are critical. I'm confident that the case I had was lessened because of three shots. And again, if you haven't had a booster, go out and get one. If you haven't been immunized, by all means, this would be an ideal opportunity. There'll be no lineups. Just make a call and you can get your vaccine.
Next question is from Katie DeRosa, Vancouver Sun.
Welcome back.
Thank you so much. Nice to be back. There is a report today that says that BC has the longest walk-in clinic wait times, and many people are struggling to find a family doctor. So what measures or what do you say to people who are desperate to see a doctor, cannot find that continuity of care, and are saying that basically we're in a doctor's crisis and are asking what the government is going to do about that?
Well, we are in a healthcare crisis. It's not just doctors, it's nurse practitioners, it's registered nurses, it's care aides, it's the continuum of care. We need more social workers, we need more psychologists. As we address decades of neglect of mental health issues, we need more healthcare professionals to address those challenges. And I've been arguing as the leader of the Council of the Federation with the federal government that we need a massive infusion of cash from Ottawa to deliver our public health care programs here in Canada. It is what separates us from the United States. It's one of the proudest elements of our social safety net here in Canada is public health care, but it will continue to erode if we don't have a massive infusion of federal capital. When the program started, it was a 50-50 proposition. The feds put in 50%, the provinces put in 50%. It's about 80-20 now, 80% falling to provinces. Some provinces have more capacity than others. It's the challenges, whether it be in long-term care, doctor shortages, primary care issues, acute care, hip replacements, knee replacements, you name it. The lineups are getting longer because we don't have the resources to manage them. I'm confident that Minister Dix and his team have a plan, but the plan will take resources, and I'm working with other premiers and the federal government to get those dollars in place so we can build back the system we're so proud of here in Canada.
Katie, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, and according to a list released by the Russian Foreign Ministry today, you were among 61 Canadians who are banned indefinitely from entering Russia. What do you say to that?
Well, I consider that a badge of honor, not for myself, but for British Columbia. The fact that we were able to catch the attention of a brutal dictator in the middle of an illegal invasion of a neighbor tells me that British Columbians stood up immediately and said, we are going to boycott Russian products. We are going to stand up and open our hearts and our homes to the Ukrainian people. I am proud to stand with the Ukraine, with Ukraine. I'm proud to stand with British Columbians who are working together to make life better for those that are fleeing violence. If the Russians don't want me to visit, I had no plans to go, but I guess I'll scratch that off my list of things to do. No longer on the bucket list if it ever was.
Next question is from Mira Baines, CBC.
Oh, my questions have already been asked, so I'm good. You can skip me.
Thanks, Mira. Next question is from Richard Zussman, Global News.
Premier, we have seen some significant disruption on the roadways in Metro Vancouver from old growth protesters. Is there something more that can be done here? And is there anything different in your mind from what these protests are doing compared to the truck convoy folks that you so passionately spoke out against as they were heading towards Victoria?
Well, again, thank you very much for the question. And it's not just in the Lower Mainland. There have been disruptions in the South Island. There are plans by this marginal group to disrupt other people's lives. And their objective, they've made it clear, you can find it on YouTube, their objective is not to save old growth, it's to make people angry. They want to provoke anger from citizens. That's not how you affect change in a civil society. I'm profoundly disappointed that these small group of people are so self-absorbed and think so highly of their opinions and their so-called rights that they feel it's okay to intrude in the rights of other British Columbians. I reject it categorically, and I'm hopeful that there will be consequences for their actions, significant consequences.
Richard, do you have a follow-up?
To the question Katie was asking, one of the things that this survey found was that people in Victoria are waiting twice as long to get into a walk-in clinic now as they did before the pandemic. We are the only province in Canada that has seen wait times go up. Is this acceptable for people to access their primary care system, that they are waiting longer now than ever before to walk into a clinic?
Well, firstly, 100,000 more people came to British Columbia last year, and that puts a strain not just on our healthcare system, it puts a strain on childcare, education, housing. So people are coming to British Columbia because it's a desirable place to be. The economy is firing on all cylinders. We've talked today about 800 jobs that were created working on watersheds to protect and enhance the essence of life, water. So British Columbia is a desirable place to be. As more people come here, more than have come since the 1990s, we're going to need to build out more services. And that takes me back to my first order of business, which is to make the case to the Prime Minister and his team that they can't continue to pick and choose where they invest in healthcare. Provinces deliver services, whether it's British Columbia, Manitoba, or New Brunswick. And we need to address these challenges in different ways depending on where we live in the country. But there is one common link, and that is our Canadian citizenship and our desire to protect public health care. The federal government needs to get in the game right now and put in place the funding formula we'll need to increase funding over time so that we can have a human resource strategy to bring in more nurse practitioners so that we can alleviate the doctor shortage for a period of time. There are compensation questions. We're into bargaining. We've got significant inflation in the marketplace. That's going to have an impact on a whole bunch of things. And in order to address that, we need more cash from Ottawa. It's as simple as that. But I don't want people to take away from that that this is about an accounting principle between two orders of government. It's about delivering services that people depend on. And that's done by people, whether they be doctors, nurses, or other healthcare professionals. And we need to say to all those people who stood up and went to work over the past 2 years, putting themselves at risk during a global pandemic, we need as a society to say, we have your back. We're going to bring on more resources to reduce your workload so you can continue to do the important things you do to keep us all healthy and safe.
Next question is from Lisa Yusta, City News.
Hi, Premier. You just mentioned about inflation, and the one question today, just what can the province do and what is your responsibility and can you do in the immediate for people who are struggling with these issues like inflation, like increasing grocery costs and gas costs?
Well, we've taken an initiative to reduce drivers' costs through using ICBC. Having a public auto insurance agency allowed us to do that without disrupting the provincial budget in any meaningful way, and I think that was a good first step. We have much more that we need to do. The challenge, of course, is that monetary policy is ultimately the responsibility of the federal government, and we've seen increases in interest rates. That's going to be a challenge for many, many people, particularly in a red-hot housing market where people have perhaps mortgaged a little bit further than they would have been comfortable with based on low interest rates. So there are a whole bunch of challenges that we face in our economy nationally and, quite frankly, internationally. That at the root of it all, of course, will be inflation. And then that's a result of 2 years of pent-up demand that is now being asked for at a time when supply doesn't exist. I've seen, I didn't want to weigh into the Sunwing issues about travel, but when you've had 2 years of no travel and all of a sudden a desire for people to get out and about, the infrastructure is not there to address that, and that has cost consequences as well. So we're going to continue to focus on what we can do, and that means making sure that we're reducing costs like childcare, making sure that the costs the province puts onto people are as small as they can possibly be. No tolls on bridges, no medical services premiums. A whole host of initiatives that we have taken to reduce costs for people is also reduces inflation over time.
Do you have a follow-up, Lisa?
So I guess just the bottom line is, in the immediate, there is little that the province can do to help with these immediate increases that people are seeing to their daily costs and lack of affordability.
Well, we're continuing to look at initiatives all the time. Minister Robinson has been directed by me to look at efforts to bring forward initiatives to assist with inflation. We'll see how that goes. I don't want to say we'll have something to say in a few weeks, because then the questions will start tomorrow. But Minister Robinson is seized of this. Her responsibility as finance minister is to try and find ways to use the strength of a $70 billion economy to try and make sure we reduce the challenges for British Columbians. And I know she's steeped in that, and she's been working on it for months, and will continue to work on it in the days ahead.
We have time for one more question. Les Lane, Times Colonist.
Well, thank you. Premier, the Attorney General released litigation guidelines this morning to do with Indigenous rights in the Declaration. I'm just wondering why the government is still in court within the Chatlet over Nootka Island, given the description, the general theme is to avoid litigation at just about all costs with First Nations.
Well, I've said less in the past in response to this question and that particular litigation that obviously the objective that we all want is to not be in court on anything. But at times in a free society, disagreements come up, and the court system has been a place where people go to solve disputes and differences of opinion. The litigation directive that Minister Eby brought forward is consistent with the work we've been doing on the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People and the Act that we unanimously passed here in BC. But it does not say in and of itself that from this point on there will be no more litigation between the Crown and Indigenous rights and title holders. That is going to continue. We want to reduce that. We want to make sure that the engagement before court is done in a way that can reduce the impacts, but we can't and we won't eliminate litigation entirely. That wasn't the objective, and that's not what the minister announced today.
Les, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, accepting what you said, you want to avoid litigation at all costs, but at the end of the day, if there is a serious disagreement that a judge has to resolve, do you think these guidelines, do you think BC government lawyers can go into court and effectively argue the province's case and perhaps protect their interests, given the guidelines that sort of it looks like they're limiting kind of the scope and the enthusiasm for the defense or for defending the government's position?
I don't read it that way, nor did Minister Eby when he briefed cabinet on these changes. That wasn't the objective at all. We have a responsibility to protect the interests of all British Columbians, Indigenous and non-Indigenous, and the courts are a component part of a civil society. We are going to see those that have not been paying attention, for example, to the 1.7 million hectares of old-growth forests that have been deferred in the past 12 months, are continuing to glue themselves to roadways. If they use the Google on their GoFundMe pages, they'd find out that a lot of work is being done. So, you know, those are issues that happen in a free and democratic society. People disagree. The courts are the best place to resolve that at the end of the day if you can't come to an agreement among parties. So I don't believe that it's half-hearted at all. Quite the opposite. It's an acknowledgement of the history of colonialism and where we are in British Columbia and in Canada in 2022. I'm proud of the work that we've done as a government, and I'm proud Lydia has several hats. She's also on the First Nations Leadership Council. So I don't know if you want to weigh in on this. It might be a useful opportunity. I don't want to put you on the spot, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think it's important that we continue to find the different mechanisms to put in place to start to change the sort of overbearing colonial mindsets that have subjugated Indigenous people over time. And I think every tool that we have, including this litigation directive and other pieces that we need to continue to work on in terms of breaking down the systems that have prejudicial impacts on Indigenous peoples, our lives and our communities. So I think every tool we have we need to bring to bear. And I think this is one more tool where we can start to move away from the denial of the existence of Indigenous peoples' humanity and rights and title.
That's all the time we have. Thanks everyone for joining us.